How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Hello, America. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I got to bring you more news on Minneapolis. The shooter has been identified, and it does appear to be as I was suggesting to you. Let me start with this. I try to take a little bit of time as these things develop, particularly on social media, because there very often are the situation where individuals, you see it happen online in these situations where someone gets blamed for something and it is not that person, and entire narratives can be developed before the truth comes out. So I try to be a little slow. Might be faster even than some prefer, but I don't want to rush in. Up the internet says, because the internet's saying, where the internet comes from is you have those two demon-possessed men who Jesus cast the demons out of into the herd of pigs because they were legion. The demons ran down into the water, drowned. Well, the demons are immortal beings, they had to go somewhere, so they fast-forwarded to the future, and they invented the internet, Twitter in particular. So you got to be careful when you deal with social media because you're dealing with the demons in real time. Well, today we are dealing with a demon in Minneapolis, a person struggling with mental health. KSTP ABC5 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, has now identified the shooter at Annunciation Church as 23-year-old Robin Westman. Robin Westman was Robert, who transitioned. Let me give you the details. What we know now from the police: 19 people wounded, all but 3 being children. 2 children ages 8 and 10 have died. 1 child was shot, has now been discharged from the hospital. The shooter was dressed in all black and armed with a rifle when he fired at Annunciation Catholic Church just before 8:30 a.m. Minneapolis time. He had a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. He fired outside the church windows, having barricaded the children into the church so they could not escape. The shooter died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. There are 10 patients being treated at Hennepin Health, all but 2 being kids between the ages of 6 and 14. 7 are critical, 4 in operating rooms. This is what we know. The shooter opened fire, having barricaded them in. He left a manifesto. The manifesto has been retrieved, and it has now been confirmed by multiple outlets to be this guy's. It is evil. It is evil. On the barrel of the gun, the shooter wrote about killing Donald Trump. On the magazine, the shooter wrote, "Where is your God now?" Robin Westman legally changed his name from Robert as a minor in 2020, identifying as male. There are other bits and pieces trickling out. Now, But that's what you need to know here. This is now, what is this, 6 or 7 trans-identified shooters, mostly targeting Christians and Christian schools. I know many of you don't like David French, but he had a piece after the Covenant School shooting in Nashville where people were mocking thoughts and prayers. In fact, Jen Psaki is online now saying prayer is not freaking enough. Prayer does not end school shootings. Prayer does not make parents feel safe sending their kids to school. And French wrote, and he just reposted this in response to that, I do not for a moment think prayer is the only response to tragedy, but for me and millions of others, it's a necessary response. On that terrible day and that morning night at Covenant Academy, when people I know were torn in two by unspeakable loss, I prayed with friends and neighbors. I prayed that God would comfort the families of the fallen, the pastors and other caregivers would possess the wisdom to minister effectively, that families and friends would be aware of and respond to the troubled young people in their midst, and that lawmakers could also demonstrate the wisdom and, just as important, moral courage to enact policies that might make a difference. He's right. I want to say something to you, to those of you who say prayer is not enough. Your statement that prayer is not enough, we must do something, is an empty incantation. It is what you say in response to people praying, and then you do nothing. And you can't address this issue. You can't address it because this is yet another shooter at a Christian school who is trans. And you can't acknowledge transgenderism as a mental health issue. So what you do is you yell back at the people offering thoughts and prayers and say that's not enough. And then you can't address the mental health issue because you refuse to recognize what normal people do, that transgenderism is a mental health issue. And increasingly now we are up to 6 or 7 school shooters who are transgender who are targeting Christian kids at Christian schools and then denying it to be the case. We're dealing with real evil. Listen, I want to say something to all of you. I'm a little bit, I admit, coming into this right now afraid because my kid has been barricaded into a classroom at her college today with a report of a shooter on campus that thankfully wasn't so. All of that was going on while all of this is going on. But I want to tell you this. I think you need to be compassionate towards and show compassion to someone who is transgender. Because if you think that you need to medically, chemically, or surgically alter your body because your brain says you were put in the wrong body, you're going through something. And you're going through something that most of us don't go through. Can't really walk in your shoes because it's not something I can relate to. It's not something most people can relate to. But I think that you and me, when we encounter someone who is trans, we should show a level of compassion to the person because they're going through something. That does not mean, and this is the problem where progressivism breaks down with empathy, it does not mean we should say it's okay. It's you go do it. It's this is your choice. That you've made this choice. This is right for you. It's actually not right. We should recognize there's a mental health issue. We should understand somebody's going through something. And the problem in so much of society right now and how we deal with these sorts of issues is you're not allowed to, in common popular cultural society, to say, I understand this person's going through some tough stuff, but I think their decision is wrong. No, what you're supposed to do in society now is say, I understand you're going through stuff. God bless you. Let me walk with you while you go through it. As opposed to, you're taking the wrong path. Let's go a different path, buddy. And you're not recognized as having sympathy among progressive society if you say, I recognize you're going through it. This is some tough stuff. I know you're burdened, but go a different way. When you say, but go a different way, you're not being empathetic enough. Empathy should stop at the border between sanity and insanity. If you believe you've got to conform your body to something else, you're dealing with a mental health issue. When someone looks in the mirror and sees a fat person looking back at them, and yet we can see all of their bones because they're anorexic, we don't let them be anorexic because they identify as a fat person. We try to get them help. And yet, for some reason, at some point, a group of mostly white, well-educated people in our society decided, no, we have to allow transgenderism and treat it as normal. And I got to tell you, and this is going to make some people mad, but in my experience and in my encounters, oftentimes what's going on is it is the parents who are allowing their kids to do it because deep down their parents think they must have done something to their kids, and they probably did. And so the way that they're going to remedy the situation is to allow the kid to go down this road. There are situations where maybe that's not the case, but oftentimes it's the kids are acting out in ways because of things that have happened to the kids. But it's a mental illness. And we should be willing to investigate how are the drugs that these kids are taking for transitioning, how are they impacting their brain chemistry? How are they functioning? Because we're dealing with real evil here. We're dealing with another shooter who specifically targeted Christian kids, and there is a report that this shooter might have had a very close relative who worked at the church and school. And we're not allowed language on that. We're not allowed to have the conversation. We're shut down by the news media. The news media treats transgenderism as just normal. And it's you and me who are the bigots for saying this isn't normal. The shooter at Covenant Academy, the shooter here, there was one in Denver, there was one in Texas. These were all the same pattern of young men transitioning to be women. And they turned violent, and they decided to target Christian kids at schools. Polite society, particular progressive secular society, doesn't have a language for evil. I have a language for evil. The absence of God. But God is a trite slogan to the left these days and not a real entity, an all-powerful being. Evil actually means something to me that doesn't mean something to the left. Evil is actually the absence of God, and this person was devoid of God. There are some Christian theologians who argue that the more you move further and further and further away from God, the less you are in the image of God and the more you are in the image of the demons. And this person released a manifesto where they used a picture of Jesus as target practice. And they wanted to go kill the Christian kids in defense of transgenderism. That's the manifesto. Those are the documents. Will CNN cover it? Will MSNBC cover it? And if they cover it, will it be because, those mean, awful bigots on the right, they don't want to treat these people as normal and they're lashing out? I suspect if they cover it at all, that's the way it's going to be covered, as the way it should truthfully be covered of we're dealing with evil in society and it's compounding mental health problems. And the mental health and the evil are colliding to do deeply demonic things like lock children into a church and try to gun them down. And the media in this country is is so far to the left and so secular. And frankly, also, there are a lot of people on the right who are totally bought into secularism, and they just use this as a cudgel to beat up the left, and they don't actually want the solution either, and they can't talk the language either, or they talk the talk and not walk the walk on what evil actually is, and evil is the absence of God. And when you hear it from the left or you hear it from the right, and God is not a part of the conversation, just a useful cudgel for one side or the other, they're missing out. We have a spiritual crisis in our country right now. It is playing out live on our TVs today, and the conversations of the politicians are not the conversations you need, but they're the conversations you get because the media and the politicians are too uncomfortable to have the conversations you actually need, and that involves someone who actually went to seminary, not into elected office. The president has ordered flags at half-staff for the children killed in Minnesota. The White House flag on top of the White House and those in the front end, the north and south lawns are being lowered as I speak. I will take your phone calls when we come back. This is a bit of a short segment here, 877-973-7425. We got a lot of stuff we've left on the cutting room floor today, obviously, as we have had to deal with this tragedy unfolding in Minneapolis. So I've read some of the manifesto of the killer. It is dark stuff. Jordan Peterson has talked about a lot about the psychological motivations of these monsters, and boy, he nailed it when you get into the manifesto, when you get into it. When we come back, I got to talk to you. You remember the sandwich thrower in Washington, D.C., threw the sandwich at the cops. They tried to charge him with a felony, and a grand jury has refused to charge the individual with the felony. He was a former Department of Justice worker. They wouldn't charge him with a felony. The Department of Justice having to go back to square one with the U.S. attorney there to try to get an indictment. They want to get an indictment from a grand jury on the guy. They're trying something. And of course, the media is using it as proof that no one in D.C. actually supports what's happening. And yet new polling shows they do. And the mayor of D.C. has now come out and thanked the federal government, thanked the government for the additional law enforcement, noting that crime has fallen remarkably. She seems to be the only Democrat who gets it, the mayor of D.C. at that. Now, I got to tell you, if you're looking for a help with your family on, finances, banking, investing, how to get your kids focused on it, well, Old Glory Bank has some free resources for you. You can use them in a homeschool curriculum. You can actually use it around the dinner table just in conversation. It's easy to understand, completely free. It's at oldglorybank.com/smart. They want to help your family. They want to help your kids get smart about finances. oldglorybank.com/smart. Old Glory Bank would love to help you educate your kids. And then if they need an account, you go to oldglorybank.com/Eric and get an account for them. I've got a savings account and a checking account with them. oldglorybank.com/smart is the website to go get the free resources. They really are very useful resources for your kids to learn how to save money, learn how to grow money, learn how to use a bank account, keep your checking account balanced, and pay attention to where your money's coming and going. oldglorybank.com/smart. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Hi there, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, Alan has been waiting quite a while, and I want to check in with him. Welcome to the show, Alan. How are you?
Good afternoon, Eric. Doing well. Long-time listener, first-time caller, and I'm calling about the blue slip Senate tradition that's going on, but I also want to say my heart goes out to these families and these kids. It's a shock.
Yeah.
But
thank you.
They're in my prayers. They're in my thoughts. Whatever I can do. But as far as the blue slip tradition, I think our country is suffering from a lot of false dichotomies that things have to be either one way or the other. And I think maybe a good compromise for blue slip would be for it to only be able to be used when there are two senators from different parties in the state, and they have to agree on it. And if they do, the blue slip goes through, and that kind of pulls politics out of the equation to some degree.
Now, Alan, we got to back up because I suspect a lot of people are wondering what is this blue slip. So a blue slip is a tactic in the Senate where a member of the Senate can issue a blue slip to oppose an appointee who would be in his state. You used to be able to blue slip at the appellate level as well. So, for example, at the appellate level in the judicial branch, let's take the 11th Circuit. The 11th Circuit is composed of judges from Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. And a senator from Alabama could put a blue slip on a judge to the 11th Circuit because that judge would affect Alabama. They reduced it to, if it was a seat to be filled by someone from Alabama, they could do a blue slip. And when Mitch McConnell was Senate Majority Leader, they got rid of the appellate level blue slip altogether. And so now the Republicans, Democrats alike, blue slip appointees in their states. And what's happening is that Democrats are blue slipping all of Trump's nominees in blue states, slowing down the appointment process. There's probably going to need to be some level of reform if Democrats go along with it. However, here's the problem. Republicans don't want to reform the blue slip process because they used it when Barack Obama and Joe Biden were president, and they used it very aggressively in red states. And it slowed down the appointments there, and they don't want to get rid of it. Now, you can say, well, the Democrats, they're going to get rid of blue slips like they did the filibuster. You can say that, except when Biden was president and the Democrats controlled the Senate, they didn't. They didn't get rid of the blue slips. It slowed them down at the state level. Both sides have argued that reform is necessary, but neither side wants to give the votes to reform it. And as a result, it's just not going to get reformed. Now, back to the phone. Shannon, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric. Once again, prayers for all of those families and children. And you and I have spoken before, and my heart has always been with the children because you and I have spoken about trafficking and such. But you were just speaking to my heart when you were talking about where is your God? And one of the things that I do is I work with children who have been harmed. And a long time ago, in a galaxy not too far away, my friend and I, wrote a book called Bad Things Can't Stop the Best Things. And it's been our mantra that there are tough, horrible things in this world. But as you and I both know with faith, there is a best thing. But also for children, there are so many best things. And it's not to simplify the hurt, but it is to say that we cannot allow the ugliest of these to take away the beauty from what is around us all the time. And I just wanted to share that with you today.
Look, I appreciate it a lot, Shannon. Very much so. And we're learning now, for example, that one of the kids who was shot laid on top of a younger kid, his friend, to protect him. We're beginning to learn a lot about the kids who rose to the challenge today to protect other kids and the adults as well. It's kind of overwhelming. You find so much out about the character of so many people and the lack of character of other people. It's kind of, just, you know what? Since we've been here all day, let me just go here. Might as well. What the heck? I'm seeing online from Jen Psaki, who is Joe Biden's White House press secretary, and others, a lot of it can't just be thoughts and prayers. It can't just be thoughts and prayers. And it's become an incantation, an empty incantation of the left to attack anyone who says they're praying. It's particularly cruel, I think, for them to mock Christians offering thoughts and prayers today when it was Christian kids who we now know were targeted by a deranged transgender shooter because they were Christian kids. So you're going to mock the Christians for offering thoughts and prayers when there's nothing else they could have done. That shows you the level of depravity we're dealing with. The rush to turn everything political. You know what's going to happen here? Nothing's going to happen. There will be no gun control. There will just be more people yelling at each other. The National Press Corps will flat out refuse, as will the Democratic Party, to have a discussion about mental health because it was a transgender shooter, and God forbid we have a conversation about mental health when the shooter was trans, targeting Christian kids. Gavin Newsom is out already saying the GOP will do absolutely nothing when our kids are being gunned down. We can't even make it through the first week of school without mass shootings. The Democrats rushing to try to seize on mass shootings as a way to slime the GOP and turn this political. And this is part of the problem. Politics has replaced religion for a lot of people on the left and the right. It's not just the left. And if you think it's the left, you might be poisoned at the political idol altar as well, because it's on the right too. Both sides are all about politics these days. Both sides want to feel like they're victims of the other side. And we've got real victims here today, and that should remind you you're probably not a victim. You've chosen to act like one. We have a tragedy that has happened today, and it's evil. And your politicians aren't going to protect you from evil. Your politicians can't do anything to stop evil. You know why I'm a conservative? I'm a conservative because I'm a Christian. I know that we're all sinners. I want as few sinners in charge of me as possible. That's why I support small government. That's why I'm a conservative. I want as few sinners in charge of me as possible. Your sinners in Washington, who you call politicians, they're not going to save you from evil. Some of them are just as depraved in different ways. And we can't have the necessary conversation because the people on the left don't recognize the conversation. They don't want to recognize the conversation because it has implications for their worldview and the way they see society that they can't stomach. Secularists want to bring utopia to earth because they don't really buy into the idea of eternity. They live their life as if this is all there is, and they want to make it as best they can. And they have a worldview and solutions for that worldview that actually just bring more tyranny into the equation. There are people on the right who use faith as a cudgel, but they're not in church on Sunday. They don't really take it seriously. It's a weapon to them. And they don't really want to take it seriously either because there's an accountability issue in how they live their lives. You see, I found in my time it's all well and good for me to sit here and bash the left and the life people on the left lead, but the moment I turn it towards the right and hold them accountable to the same standards, oh gosh, no, you can't do that. Whether you want to talk about Trump's lifestyle or Bill Clinton's lifestyle. No, we can't do that anymore. You're never Trump. You're bashing Donald Trump. You can't. Who cares about character anymore? You see, character still matters. That's the point. And it's all well and good to use the Bible to slap across the face of the left, but, it's judging you too. It's an anchor on all of us. And there are a lot of people on the right who feel like they can't stand up and be authentic in faith because, well, that would raise all sorts of questions about their political allegiances. And the people on the left just flat out reject it. And so neither side will fix the problem. And this becomes more and more the norm because neither the left nor the right wish to dive into the implications of authentically being committed to their faith and recognizing there is a spiritual problem. And if there is a spiritual problem, it requires a spiritual solution. Westman was Robert Westman, who transitioned and turned to hating life and turned to hating the kids in this Christian community and decided to murder them. The gun was the tool. It was the hate. It was the hate that provoked this. And to the left, that hate comes from the hostility of people to accept transgenderism. And on the right, it comes from, well, transgenderism is a mental illness, which is the correct position. So how do you solve the problem? What you do is you yell at each other, and then you don't solve the problem. Banning guns won't solve the problem. Fixing the brokenness of the soul solves the problem. But politicians can't solve that, and half the people, those on one side, don't even recognize that people have a soul. They're atheists. They don't have the language necessary to deal with the problem. It's why atheistic societies so often descend into mass violence, whether it's Pol Pot or Mao or Stalin or Hitler. Secular atheist societies tend to descend into mass violence. Why? Because secular atheists reject the afterlife. They believe they got to bring heaven to earth. They got to build a utopia. And those of you who stand in the way of their utopia, you got to be eliminated. The language for the conversation comes from the church. Frankly, there are too many people in the church who've decided that they want to get political as well. You know, politics is supposed to be a small sphere of our lives, and you and I and everybody else has allowed it to expand into everything. And so we get to a horrible situation like this where children are dead at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and people want political solutions from politicians. The politicians who can't keep us safe generally, half of whom don't even think there's a crime problem in the country. It's sad. It's a damning indictment on our culture. That here we have real victims. I've watched people for the last 72, 96 hours be victimized on social media because a restaurant with bad food changed its logo. And it was a affront to them, and they were victimized by the change of logo. They chose to act like victims. Here are real victims today. See the difference. People spun up by politics. I think until we're all willing to be more open about the failures in our society at that spiritual level, it's only going to get worse. And if I could offer you some advice before we go to commercial break. I just want to say again, I think the best advice I've ever read on this topic actually comes from Scripture. And you don't have to be a theologian. You don't have to be a Christian. You can be an atheist and just take it as good advice. Seek the welfare of the community in which you live and pray for it, and there you'll find your welfare. Stop looking for political solutions from Washington, D.C. to save you and to fix your life. Go fix your community yourself. Go be involved. Find your local battered women's shelter. Find your local homeless shelter. Find your local soup kitchen. Find your local food bank. Go work there. Go see the problems in your community and work to fix them, and bring your friends and get them involved. And if you do, seek the welfare of your community, you're going to improve your community wherever you are. Now think about all the people listening to the show, the millions of people listening to me right now. You all commit to do it. You're all in different places. You live, improve your community, not through politics, but through your own sweat. And if you do that, these problems begin to diminish. Instead, too many people are waiting for the politicians who caused the problems in the first place to fix the problems that they made and benefit from letting fester. This is on us. It's not on them. The politicians aren't going to fix it. We are. And if we begin to improve our local community and recognize that we in some way can help solve the spiritual problems by engaging our spirit in the good work of building our community, we're going to do more than the politicians can ever do. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson. Can we end on this note, please? Because this is an amen on an otherwise pretty heavy day on radio, and I gotta say, this is a sentiment I share, I embrace, I believe in, and I hope that the President of the United States will do something to fix the situation. Marco Rubio asking the President of the United States to please do something about people getting married during college football season. It is a something that, please, Mr. President, do something about.
People getting married on Saturdays during college football season is a scourge, Mr. President. It's dividing families. I don't know if we can have an executive order on this. It's insane, but it's really difficult. There's 7 other months of the year that people can get married, so I just wanted to say that because it's very, very difficult. Thank you.
When my wife and I got married 25 years ago this October, we were handed a copy of the University of Georgia's football schedule, and were deeply encouraged to find a weekend on which they were either playing out of town or not playing at all. And, of course, my employee Philip picked when UGA would be playing at home to minimize the number of people coming to his wedding. Football, arranging weddings around football, it is a thing here in the South. Y'all, let me tell you about Americans for Prosperity. AFP would love to have you take one small step for freedom in your community. Get 250,000 of us doing it. Improve our communities everywhere in the country. It's their 250,000 Steps for Freedom Challenge in advance of our 250th anniversary of the nation. You can find out more at afpvolunteer.com. afpvolunteer.com. Americans for Prosperity has chapters in every state. They're committed to limited government. They're committed to common sense conservative reforms. They advocate freedom everywhere. They've been big boosters of the president's tax plan, school choice reform, deregulation for small businesses, and they'd love to have you on board. But right now, just to advance freedom in your community, find out what they mean and see if you want to get involved at afpvolunteer.com. The 250,000 Step Challenge for freedom in this country in the run-up to our 250th anniversary as a nation, recommitting ourselves to the founders' vision of this country. And we can make a more perfect union together, each of us, by taking a step for freedom. That's what AFP wants us to do. Americans for Prosperity. You go to afpvolunteer.com to find out more. You guys pray for the victims in Minnesota. I will talk to you all tomorrow.